So for people that are not familiar with you, you do animal science, and specifically you work a lot with the meat packing world. But why don't you give a little rundown about your background, who you are, and why you travel all over the world to talk to people about animals?
Do a little rundown. Well, when I was a little kid, I had no speech. I was a severely autistic little kid. And I was always good at building things. When I was in high school, my world revolved around horses. And then I went out to Arizona State University, and I got my master's in animal science, and I started working with the cattle feed yards. And I can tell you, in the 1970s, being a woman in a man's industry, that was not easy. And I had to make myself really good at what I did. And I started designing cattle handling facilities. In fact, there was an HBO movie made about me, and I loved the fact that they showed all my jobs. So designing facilities, and then I gradually, built up that business. I've designed a piece of equipment called the center track restrainer system that is in all of the large beef plants have got it. So equipment, working in behavior. And then I started being asked to do more and more talks about autism. Autism goes from Einstein and half of Silicon Valley programmers, like the fancy mic you've got. The autistic brain probably invented that. To somebody who can't dress themselves. So I've been doing a lot of talks on what I call my different kinds of minds talk, where I talk about visual thinking, math thinking, and verbal thinking. And so I've now in my early 70s. So what I've been doing lately is speaking engagements. But back in the 80s and the early 90s, I was living out in the plants, supervising construction projects, supervising the construction of things I had designed. I also worked with McDonald's Corporation on animal welfare auditing and developed a really simple scoring system for evaluating meat plants. I did that in 1999 and the world in the year 2000, around in there. So I've been doing a lot of different things. And I was traveling all around working on animal behavior and building things. Now, recently, I was traveling around the universities doing talks to motivate the kids that think differently to get out and be successful. And then all of a sudden, all of this was canceled on March 13th.
You and I have had a chance to meet a couple of different times, and the last time was at NAMI, the North American Meat Institute Conference.
Yep, that's right.
And we had a fantastic lunch because we had a conversation about what it is to think visually.
Okay.
And I think that I think in pictures in many ways, and my ability to speak about what I see in those pictures has given me a great advantage. But I think you have done a great job of explaining how different people see the world differently and why they can see things and shape things differently in their mind. How do you describe this to people that don't necessarily have this ability?
Well, one of the things the HBO movie Temple Grandin did really well is it showed exactly how I think. And there was one scene in there where they said shoes, and all these old 1950s and 60s shoes started popping up. Or I can be thinking about horses, and now I'm seeing different horses. Some I saw yesterday, a horse I rode in high school. It's specific. Specific examples make concepts. Like when I design equipment, I can see it. When I was doing the drawings, I can see the steel work, see the concrete work. Nothing's abstract. Verbal thinkers, things tend to be much, much more abstract. They'll say to me, oh, teachers say all the time, what do I do with autistic kids in the classroom? I don't know. How old are they? Am I dealing with a 3-year-old? I get a very different picture. I'm now seeing a little nursery school that's next door to where I live. Or an elementary school kid, a high school kid. I need to know a few things before I can answer that.
And then a child that's gotten older, that's autistic, is it that they have more concrete pictures through which they can grab ideas and be able to place them into their imagination? Like why is there such a large difference between the autistic child that's in nursery school up to high school?
Well, some abilities and things like visual thinking and math usually don't show up in nursery school. But a person with autism is in the details, specific things. I'm a picture thinker. That's actually called an object visualizer scientifically. Another kind of thinker you can have in autism is the mathematical visual spatial thinker. That's half of Silicon Valley. Half of Silicon Valley is probably on the autism spectrum. And then you've got people that are into words, love history. They often absolutely love history, love facts. They love sports statistics and things like this. So there's like three kind of specific kinds of thinking. In fact, I talk about those thinking in my book, The Autistic Brain, because you might just say, well, that's just a bunch of, that's not even true. Well, yes, it is true. There's science to show you can have an object visualizer. They tend to go into arts. Another thing they go into is the skilled trades, fixing cars, designing things, building things. Then the more mathematical thinkers, they're the computer scientists. They bring, the electronics that we're talking on. And then you've got word thinkers. But what happens is if you add circuits to do some of this other kind of thinking, you take out some social circuits. Socialization eats up a pile of processor space, just a big pile. And a brain can either be more thinking or a brain can be more social emotional. Now, a certain amount of this is just normal variation. When do you slap a label on it? Because one of the questions I ask educators, and I put up a picture of Michelangelo, and I'll say, he was a 6th grade dropout. His dad hated art, wanted him to do business documents. Well, where would he end up today when they've taken art class out of the schools? I think one of the worst things the schools have done is taken all the hands-on classes out. Okay, what about stuff online? Lectures work fine. Computer science, statistics class works fine online. But I just talked to our veterinary students yesterday, and calving class online. You're not going to learn to calve cows online.